Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. A reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 82, Text 48. Ahu cha te nalinam nabham paravindam yogeshwarair hridi vichintyam aghadam bodhai samsaram kupam patitotarana valambam geham jusham api manasi udiyat sada nam ahushchate nalinanaba padara vindam ahushchate nalinanaba padara vindam yogeshwarair hiridi vichintyam aghada bodhai Yogeshwarair Hridi Vichintyam Agadha Bodhai Samsara Kupa Patito Ranavalambham Samsara Kupa Patito Taranavalambham Geham jusham apimanasyu udiyat sadanam Geham jusham apimanasyu udiyat sadanam Ahushchate nalinanaba padara vindam Yogeshwarair Hidi Vichintyam Agadha Bodhai Samsara Kupa Patito Taranavalambam Geham Jusham Api Manasyudiyat Sadana Ahushchate Nalinanaba Padara Vindam Yogeshwarair Hidi Vichintyam Agadha Bodhai Samsara Kupa Patito Taranavalambam Geham Jusham Apimanasudiyat Sadanam Mataji? Ahu, the gopis said, Cha, and Te, your, Nalinanabha, O Lord, whose navel is just like a lotus flower. Pada Aravinda, lotus feet. Yoga Ishvarai, by the great mystic yogis. Hridi, within the heart. Vichintyam, to be meditated upon. Agadha Bodhai, who were highly learned philosophers. Samsara Kupa, the dark well of material existence. Patita, of those fallen. Uttarana, of deliverers. Avalambham, the only shelter. Geham, family affairs. Jusham, of those engaged. Api, do. Manasi, in the minds. Udiyat, let be awakened. Sada, always. Na, hour. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The gopis spoke thus, Dear Lord, whose navel is just like a lotus flower, your lotus feet are the only shelter for those who have fallen into the deep well of material existence. Your feet are worshipped and meditated upon by great mystic yogis and highly learned philosophers. We wish that these lotus feet may also be awakened within our hearts, although we are only ordinary persons engaged in household affairs. Purport. The translation and word meaning for this verse are taken from Srila Prabhupada's English rendering of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 181, where the verse is quoted. Revealing the jealous mood in which the gopis spoke these deceptively reverential words, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti gives their statements as follows. O Supreme Lord, O directly manifest Super Soul, O crest jewel of instructions in definite knowledge, you were aware of our excessive attachment to home, property, and family. Therefore, you previously had Uddhava instruct us in the knowledge that dispels ignorance, and now you have done so yourself. In this way, you have purified our hearts of contamination, and as a result, we understand your pure love for us, free from any motivation other than assuring our liberation. But we are only unintelligent, cowherd women. How can this knowledge remain fixed in our hearts? We cannot even meditate steadily on your feet, the focus of realization of the great souls like Lord Brahma. Please be merciful to us and somehow make it possible for us to concentrate on you, even a little. We are still suffering the reactions of our own fruitive work. So how can we meditate on you, the goal of great yogis? Such yogis are immeasurably wise, but we are mere feeble-minded women. Please do something to get us out of this deep well of material life. Pure devotees are never motivated by a desire for material elevation or spiritual liberation. And even if the Lord offers them such benedictions, the devotees often refuse to accept them. As stated by Lord Krishna in 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Na kinchit sadabodhira bhakta hi ekantino mama vanchanti api maya datam kaivalyam apunar bhavam. Because my devotees possess saintly behavior and deep intelligence, they completely dedicate themselves to me and do not desire anything beside me. Indeed, even if I offer them liberation from birth and death, they do not accept it. It is quite appropriate, therefore, that the gopis respond with a trace of jealous anger to Lord Krishna's attempt at teaching them jnana yoga. Thus, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the words the gopis speak in this verse may be interpreted as follows. O sun, who directly destroys the darkness of ignorance, we are scorched by the sun rays of this philosophical knowledge. We are chakora birds who can subsist only on the moonlight radiating from your beautiful face. Please come back to Vrindavan with us, and in this way bring us back to life. And if he says, then come to Dwarka. There we will enjoy together. They reply that Sri Vrindavan is their home, and they are too attached to it for them, they're too attached to it for them to make up residence anywhere else. Only there, the gopis imply, can Krishna attract them by wearing peacock feathers in his turban and playing ecstatic music with his flute. Only by his appearing again in Vrindavan can the gopis be saved, not by any other kind of meditation on him or theoretical knowledge of the self. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalaka Chakshurunlitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gorangira De Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Ahushchate Nalinanaba Padaravindam Yogeshwarai Hridivi Chintyam Aghada Bodhai Samsara Kupa Patito Taranavalam Geham Jusham Apimanasyudiyat Sadanam. The gopis spoke thus, Dear Lord, whose navel is just like a lotus flower, your lotus feet are the only shelter for those who have fallen into deep well of material existence. Your feet are worshipped and meditated upon by great mystic yogis and highly learned philosophers. We wish that these lotus feet may also be awakened within our hearts, although we are only ordinary persons engaged in household affairs. So this is the last verse of the description of Rajabasis visiting the holy dham of Kurukshetra. So at Kurukshetra, which was known as the holy place, as we hear from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra, Samaveta Yutsava. It has been a holy place even before Parashuram came and manifested 5 different lakes, which were actually lakes of blood of all the slain kshatriyas that he had killed because of not practicing the dharmic principles. And the lesson that Lord Parashuram wanted to make by creating such a lakes and atoning by bathing in those lakes was actually that killing is very sinful activity. Of course, he didn't have to atone, having the powered position as a Shaktavesha avatar, but just for sake of teaching everybody else, he undertook that position of atoning and exemplifying to everybody else what actually everyone should do. So those different lakes have served for a long time also as a place of pilgrimage, as well as the place where we know Bhagavad Gita had been later on spoken. And once it has been predicted that there will be a solar eclipse, which is considered very inauspicious. So upon hearing that, and this was very, very special, especially inauspicious solar eclipse, so the residents of Dwarka decided that they will go to Kurukshetra to also atone at such kind of occasion to this very holy place of Kurukshetra and atone for their sinful activities, at least what they consider to be sinful activities, which of course were not sinful activities. But again, still they considered it as such. So they all decided to prepare for the journey, and they embarked on that journey, and they arrived at this holy place of Kurukshetra. And they mounted upon big elephants, which were very gorgeously decorated. They mounted upon the enormous chariots, which were described to be almost as heavenly airplanes with many horses. It is said that they were coming like in the waves, like a waves in ocean. And everything was very festive, everything was very, very opulent. So a big number of Dwarkavasis arrived at the holy place of Kurukshetra. And they also performed different kinds of atonements there. Again, to kind of atone for certain kind of prescribed duties that they performed. And not just the Dwarkavasis, the most prominent ones being Akrura, Vasudev, Ugrasena, and many others. But then there were so many other kings who also took the opportunity to come to the Kurukshetra for that kind of occasion, the holy place, to guard themselves, to protect themselves from the inauspicious influence of the solar eclipse. And then hearing that Krishna is coming to the Kurukshetra, then also Brajabasis, they also prepared to embark on the journey and of course to meet Krishna. So everybody was coming to Kurukshetra, and when they arrived, they all, when they met each other, they were all very jubilant. They were all displaying the symptoms of ecstasy, because actually Brajabasis especially, they didn't see Krishna for a long time. It was practically almost 80 years have passed since Krishna had left and stayed in Dwarka. So the emotions were just overwhelming. And they were all hugging each other, inquiring about their welfare. They were all shedding tears. The hearts were throbbing. The hair was standing on the end. And they were all spending time together, talking about different kinds of pastimes, actually, that all involved Krishna. So although they went to the holy place on the pretext of performing various kinds of charities, sacrifices, again, performing different atonements, and talking about different kinds of ritualistic activities, but actually it was all in relationship to Krishna. It was not some kind of karma kanda activities. It was all in relationship to Krishna. And although they were also serving the brahmanas, they were distributing food, different items as such, but actually everything was centered upon Krishna. So when Vasudev met Kunti, then they also had a discussion how Kunti was narrating how when they were in exile and Krishna was with them and how many tribulation had to underwent, and did Vasudev ever thought about them? So definitely Vasudev replied. But the point was that they were all talking about Krishna. And then also Bhishmadev came, Drona had come, so many different kings of Matsyas, Panchalas, they all came. And when they were all meeting each other, and especially when Brajavasis came to Kurukshetra, then they were all discussing different pastimes of Krishna. How Krishna had performed different kinds of activities. And Krishna was the center of all of their talk. So when the Brajabasis came, they of course loaded their bullock carts, and they were all in great anxiety and anticipation coming to Kurukshetra. So when they all came, when they arrived, and that moment of seeing Krishna, that was just almost undescribable moment of the joy, and then that feeling of that separation that they had now finally manifested in the form of meeting Krishna, or fulfilled in the form of meeting Krishna. And they all rushed and embraced Krishna and inquired about Krishna, and especially Nanda Baba and Mother Yashoda. They were embracing Krishna and Balaram and having them seated on their lap, and they were embracing and then caressing and talking for a long time, inquiring about so many things. Of course, Krishna and Balaram, they were not small boys anymore, but still, those were their very, very intensely deep feelings that the parents had for, like any ordinary parents might have for their children. Of course, we know sometimes when we go home, and after quite some time, how the parents react and how do they react also when we are supposed to go back. But we can't imagine what is, of course, the level of love that Nanda and Yashoda have for Krishna. And what to speak also after so many years, so many decades have passed that Krishna has not been present. So they all inquired about Krishna's welfare, asking him about so many different things that he had done. And there was also then Devaki and Rohini. And then they're seeing that display of parental love towards Krishna. They were very amazed how much more that deeper affection actually Nanda and Yashoda had towards Krishna and Balaram. And then they started revealing their heart, pointing how Nanda and Yashoda had performed tremendous service and how indebted they are to them for taking care of both Balaram and Krishna. How they have nurtured them, how they have brought them, raised them, how they have performed so many different kinds of ceremonies. And they actually explained how they were Krishna and Balaram's real father and mother. And that was, of course, that was a fact. Nanda and Yashoda were the real mother and father of Balaram and Krishna. And then Yashoda also and Rohini and Devaki, they were having a very deep, intimate conversations about Krishna's activities, because they were each eager to know what Krishna did in his childhood, and then Yashoda also and Nanda were eager to hear about Krishna performing his activities, Dwarka. So as they were talking, then in the distance, Krishna saw the gopis who were in extreme anxiety. They were just having intense anticipation. And then taking the advantage of all the mothers talking together, then Krishna slipped away and then met the gopis in a very secluded place. And of course, they were all very eager to see each other, to meet each other, and they were embracing, inquiring about each other. And then Krishna asked a question, because they were very silent. I mean, after so many years of that separation, and devotees gopis were very silent. So then Krishna, to break that silence, inquired first from them. He said that, do you think that I'm ungrateful to you? Do you think that, in spite of your never forgetting me, that I have misbehaved, that I have neglected you? So he was asking these questions. But still you have remained so faithful in your thoughts towards me. So then he said that the reason for my absence and my leaving Vrindavan was that there are so many enemies that I had to chastise, that I had to kill them. And not just those demons who appeared in Vraja, but there were so many outside of the Vraja. And this is the main reason that I have left the Vrindavan. And then Krishna was trying to explain to the gopis that, like in this verse also, we have some glimpse of that discussion that was following. So Krishna was explaining that I'm present in all my energies, that there is no difference between energy and energetic. So he was propounding actually the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, that I'm simultaneously one and different from my manifestation. Then he said that it is just like an earthen pot, which is made out of earth and clay, and then again, when broken, it will return back to earth and clay. And he was saying that all the relationships in the world are temporary relationships, and that everything that happened is by the will of the providence. So by the will of the providence, we were associated together, but then by the will of the providence, we were again separated from each other. So he said, just like a wind, when the wind blows and collects all different particles of dust and cotton and leaves and twigs, so then also the same wind, that few moments separates all of those, not to be met ever again. So Krishna was explaining this philosophy of his non-difference from, and of course the circumstances that all of those particular incidents happen, that he is non-different from his energy. But of course the gopis were not feeling very satisfied. The gopis were not feeling satisfied. And Krishna had come dressed in a very opulent way, just like a king. And he had arrived in Kurukshetra on a big opulent chariots drawn by so many horses, accompanied by so many servants. And that gopis were not able to relate to Krishna in such a way. It is said very interestingly, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he said that the Kurukshetra is actually more desired place to be than Vrindavan. He made this statement. So that's might be sounding very shocking statement, that how could Kurukshetra be a very prominent place, so prominent place that it's more prominent than Vrindavan. Of course, for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we know that what are the two most important places, Navadvip and Vrindavan. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati made this statement that Kurukshetra is even more desirable place to live, to be, to serve. So then Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Swami, he was trying to ponder over that statement and try to understand what would that mean. And it took him a long, long time until he penetrated into the meaning of this particular statement. Because in his Padyavali, Rupa Goswami, he explains different levels of rasa, different mellows. And then when he comes to describing Madhurya rasa, he explained that gopis in the Kurukshetra express their feelings saying that although you're the same Krishna and we are the same gopis, but still this Aishwarya, this mood of Dvarka and this opulence accompanying Krishna, it's not the same. It's not the same. They didn't have the same feelings again. They didn't have that same mood, that same atmosphere was not there. So they were having those kind of feelings manifested. They were not satisfied. And this is why the whole Ratha Yatra pastime is to try to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan. Try to bring Krishna back into such an surrounding, in such an atmosphere where the gopis would feel again in the same way as they did when Krishna was present 80 years ago. So they were not feeling satisfied. So then Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Swami explained that performing service, therefore, at a place where Radha and Krishna couldn't meet so openly is the most exalted type of service. Why? Because they were also surrounded by so many relatives, the gopis and Krishna. They were all surrounded by so many kings. They were all surrounded by so much opulence. So, as we are singing, Nikunja Yuno Radikeli Sidya, to perform the service, for which purpose? To bring Radha and Krishna together. So, to bring Radha and Krishna together, especially at the place where it's most difficult to bring them together. So he explained then, yes, this is what is the most exalted position. Yeah, this is what is. So therefore, performing service at Kurukshetra, this is something that is exceptionally unique and revered by Radha and Krishna. Because that is the place where they just couldn't meet so openly. They couldn't meet so freely. They couldn't become intimate at such a place. So then if somebody attempts at least or tries to perform any kind of service or trying to bringing them in any way together, then this is something that is so many times multiplied, so many times valued. And it brings that mercy and blessings of both Radha and Krishna. So this is why Kurukshetra has that very, very significant position. It's a very unique place. It's a very important place. So we also see here, this is another aspect exemplifying that dissatisfaction of the gopis at this place. Of course, we may say it's a negative one, but it's not a negative one. Again, it exalts the place of Kurukshetra in a sense that it enhances that separation that gopis have from Krishna. How it enhances? Like we know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, gopis here speak about Krishna, speak about in a very reverential mood here in this verse. He said, your feet are worshipped, meditated upon great yogis. You're the shelter of those who have fallen into deep well of material existence. So with a lot of respect, gopis, like in the mood of Aishwarya, the gopis are glorifying Krishna. But this is all spoken, and of course they use the words and the names of Krishna which point to Krishna's secondary names. They're not Krishna's primary names. They're not so intimate. They're not so close. So one would wonder why gopis are doing so. And this is something very interesting that we see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also did the same during the Rath Yatra festival. He would call upon Lord Jagannath, Mahima, Mahima, or he would call Jagannath, of course, or he would call Jagannath Patita Pavan. He would call him in such different names which we might consider, they would be considered to be kind of like a secondary names, not really the primary names of the Lord. So then why is that so? So the explanation is given that the gopis call Krishna in such a way because, of course, we know that opulence diminishes the ecstatic loving feelings. It reduces that affection and attraction towards the Lord. It gives the feeling of some distance. And then, of course, that the separation or vipralamba bhav, it enhances the love that the gopis or devotees have towards Krishna. So then when gopis, like in this case, they use these different phrases and names of Krishna which are secondary, actually they're doing so in a mocking, condescending, disdaining way because they're angry at Krishna. This is why they're doing so. And therefore this kind of mood of Aishwarya, it's exemplified even more and enhanced by that feeling of vipralamba, that the gopis have. And therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also responds in the same way when the Rath Yatra takes place. So he's calling Lord Jagannath, he's calling him as a Jagannath, he's calling Krishna as a Jagannath, but actually he's exemplifying that mood of the gopis that they have towards Krishna, and they're not really satisfied with that particular environment that they're in and the situation, but they're expressing their very deep inner meanings of their heart, of that love that they have towards Krishna. So that mood of separation and that the transcendental exalted emotions, Srila Prabhupada explains at the end of this particular chapter in the Krishna book, he says that this is that those transcendentally exalted emotions that the gopis have. This is the whole sum and substance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. And this is the whole essence of the Rath Yatra pastimes that has been, that is performed. So that mood of the gopis, this is something that is extraordinary, very deep, very intimate. So therefore this Rath Yatra ceremony or the festival celebration, it takes place to remind every one of us how we should actually bring Krishna into our hearts, thinking of Krishna all the time and worshipping Krishna within our hearts as well, not thinking that Krishna is not present. Because when Krishna explains all these different aspects of the Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva philosophy, saying that he was pointing out, he's not different than the deity. Because we dress the deity, we feed the deity, we do so many things towards the deity, so that it's not different than Krishna. But to have that understanding, yes, that one has to, of course, mature very much in that practice of Krishna consciousness, and of course, having that understanding that the gopis have. Because how did Krishna come to Vrindavan? It's not that Krishna, of course, Krishna is always in Vrindavan, but from Kurukshetra, from that point of view, Krishna didn't go to Vrindavan at that point. He didn't go with the gopis. Could have even suggested to them that please, you come to Dwarka and we will be together there. But they wouldn't be satisfied. They were not satisfied with such kind of a proposal. Because it's a whole different mood. Because Krishna in Dwarka, Krishna doesn't have a peacock feather. Krishna doesn't have a flute. Krishna is not dressed as a cowherd boy. It's a whole different mood. It's a whole different the relationship that Krishna has with the Dvarkavasis. So he couldn't display that relationship there that he's having in Vrindavan. So therefore the gopis invited Krishna into their hearts. So within the hearts, we're always within the mind thinking of Krishna. And whatever, as they were as they were pointing out here, saying that, we are engrossed in ordinary performance of the household affairs, but actually they were always thinking of Krishna. Krishna was always within their heart. It's explained that Krishna, when Nanda brought them to Mathura and then left without them, then actually Krishna and Balaram did go to Vrindavan, but in the particular mood of bhava. In the mood of bhava. So they were always present again, like in the hearts of the Brajavasis. So in the similar way, the gopis also, they took Krishna in their hearts. They took Krishna into Vrindavan. So the Rath Yatra festival is performed with that kind of mood that Krishna should be brought back to Vrindavan, because the Gundicha Mardin represents Vrindavan and the Jagannath temple represents the Dwarka or Kurukshetra. So when the festival is performed, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he also enters into that mood, the mood of the gopis, and he displays incredibly wonderful ecstatic symptoms of ecstasy. We know when he dances around the Rath in so many different ways. And of course, even before, the whole mood of inviting Lord Jagannath to ascend the Rath, and then all the Daitas, it says, those who are descendants of the Shabaras and later on different Brahmanas who are in charge of taking Jagannath on the Rath. They're binding Jagannath with the silken ropes. They hold him by the feet and by the hands. They're bringing Jagannath, and it's not easy. Of course, Jagannath is not light. He's the Lord of the universe. He's more heavier than anything heavier that exists. But he allows his devotees to take him up to the Rath. But still, they struggle. It's not easy. Then the whole path towards the Rath is filled with the different cotton like pillows, pads that are placed, and then when they're like churning Jagannath practically back and forth and trying to carry, and sometimes those pads burst and then the cotton is spread around, and then slowly Jagannath is brought to the Rath. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu participates in all these pastimes, relishing all of those different activities that are part of the ceremony to bring Jagannath up on the cart. And then the king, Prataparudra, at that time, he would come, and then with the sandalwood scented water, he would sprinkle everything around. And then, of course, he would sweep the floor. And in this way, this is another, of course, description how in this way King Prataparudra became very dear and received the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu externally didn't want to mix with any ordinary so-called materialistic person. But of course, he knew that King Prataparudra was a great devotee. That's why, anyway, at the end of the procession, actually not really the end, but on a little more than the midway, when after so much of the pulling of the Rath, the procession had halted for some period of time for Chaitanya, just to allow Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take some rest, and that all the devotees would be fed and offer different kinds of services. So then King Prataparudra took the opportunity to massage the feet of the Lord, and in this way, Lord, apparently appearing oblivious of existence of the person who is massaging his feet, allow him to receive even more mercy. Upon which Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya commented, saying that how fortunate you are, referring to the king, of being bestowed such a mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So then, during the Ratha procession, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu organized different devotees who have been participating in the Rath festivities. And the chief among all of them was Svarup Damodar. Today is his disappearance day. And of course, Shivananda Sena, today is also his disappearance day. So Svarup Damodar, he was very, very melodious singer. It is said that he was singing as Gandharva and then he was learned as Brihaspati. And he took sannyas earlier before coming to Puri, and then upon coming to Jagannath Puri, he became personal associate, personal, practically direct assistant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was always conversing upon different kinds of scriptures, and main particular service that he would perform was to always make sure that everything is in a proper mellow presented to the Lord in a particular rasa, that there's no mixture of the mellows, that there's no rasa basa. So then he would only allow certain scriptures to be read and heard by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu which were appropriate, not any others. So because Svarup Damodar, he was just like talking with Ramananda Rai also in the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about very, very intimate pastimes. So it is said that they were just like Lalita and Vishaka in association of Krishna. And then, of course, Shivananda Sena, he was a very prominent associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was using all his wealth to bring the devotees for this Ratha Yatra festival. All the way from Bengal, they would take 1 month going on foot to reach Puri, and he would make all the arrangements. Only once it so happened that he was delayed by a certain tax collector. They had to pass different kinds of checking points. And then he didn't have time to arrange. Devotees have been traveling for a long time and they felt hungry. And then once he only was delayed and stayed back, upon which Lord Nityananda became very angry and it started cursing that even his son would die. He had 3 sons, one of his sons, that he would die. And then his wife became very disturbed, and when he reached, then he was pacifying her that you don't have to, it's this is actually blessing. It's not that Lord Nityananda is kind of pronouncing curses or so. And when he met Lord Nityananda, and then Lord Nityananda kicked him. And that was, he perceived that as the greatest of the blessings, the lotus feet of the Lord of the universe, granting him such a blessing, such a mercy. So Shivananda Sena, he was then, of course, he fed all the devotees and offered obeisances and begged for the forgiveness and received even more mercy of Lord Nityananda. So he was constant associate, and he was every time Ratha Yatra would take place, he would organize all the devotees and facilitate their coming for the Ratha Yatra. So during this Ratha Yatra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would divide different groups. He would divide different groups that were holding kirtans. So initially there were 4, and then 3 more arrived from different places from Bengal. And they were all having tumultuous kirtan, chanting the holy names of Krishna. And seeing that Rath, Srila Prabhupada said that the Rath was just so wonderful. It was so amazing, decorated with different chamaras, brass bells, with all different kinds of ornaments, paintings. So it was just appearing so huge and so amazing, like Mount Sumeru. So then Srila Prabhupada said that when he performed the first Ratha Yatra in London, so then the reporter compared, saying that this Rath is rivaling the Nelson's column. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, just like residents of Puri considered Rath to be as Mount Sumeru, so similarly in the West, the Rath was compared to the Nelson's column, rivaling him. So it was so grandiose, it was so impressive, it was so wonderful. I know when my first Ratha Yatra, actually the first Ratha Yatra I ever attended was here in Juhu, was here. I don't know, sometimes in late 90s. I'm not sure. It was starting at Jan Manersi by ground. Huh? Ja- I'm sorry? Downtown. Um, can't remember, but anyway, I know it was the first one. First one in Juhu, sometimes that time. And then the first one, of course, today is in Mira Road. So first Mira Road Ratha Yatra I attended. And was all flooded, like the water till knee. Of course, it was rain. Anyway, there was some. So it was very impressive. Somehow or other in the West, I did later on, I attended some different Ratha Yatras, but the first Ratha Yatras I attended were here in India. And the whole atmosphere is just such a festive, uh, amazing experience, and with so many devotees. And we used to get encouraged hearing that if one just sees the face of Lord Jagannath, that impression will be the greatest impression, that at the time of death, no other impression would actually be as prominent, and then one is guaranteed practically to go back home, back to Godhead. Like in Nectar of Devotion, it is stated that if anyone, even if somebody is low-born, if he participates in the Ratha Yatra ceremony, even walking ahead or behind, it doesn't matter, he will automatically achieve all the, practically that sarshti, all the opulences of the Lord upon leaving his body. So the Ratha Yatra ceremony is definitely something that creates a very, very deep impression. Of course, it's very engaging. It's a very, very enlivening ceremony. And so when the Ratha Yatra happened during the time of Lord Chaitanya, we can't even imagine then how was that kind of Ratha Yatra, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally present, personally dancing, personally instructing everybody. He would garland everyone, offer them sandalwood paste. And then he would manifest, it is said, only pure devotees, of course, the Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and the King Prataparudra, they were given opportunity to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifested in all the 7 different groups that were performing these different kirtans around the Rath. And everybody was in such ecstasy. And of course, the symptoms of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have been described, all the different ecstatic symptoms, and he would sometimes crash and roll and shed tears and tremble and change the color events, and teeth would chatter, that people, they were all thinking that he would practically lose his teeth. How so many different ecstatic symptoms have been: hair standing on the end, tears coming from his eyes. He was performing so many different, exhibiting so many different types of ecstatic symptoms. And then at one point he called all of them together, and then they manifested circles around him, so that other people, three layers of the circles of devotees, so that other people wouldn't disturb Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he was dancing in ecstasy, ecstatic symptoms. They were also manifested in practically so many devotees seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing in such a way. So coming back to there are too many points here, but since our time is up, it's like some just... So devotees here also, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was exhibiting this kind of ecstatic symptoms and of separation from Krishna, as the gopis were also experiencing these ecstatic symptoms of separation from Krishna. And of course, one very interesting pastime is that when the Rath would stop, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would dance and go behind the Rath. So he was exemplifying the mood of Srimati Radharani, because Lord Jagannath, then the Rath would stop, and no matter what anyone would try, they couldn't move that Rath. So what was that pointing to? Srila Prabhupada explains in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Srimati Radharani would want to know whether Krishna forgot about the gopis, forgot about them. So just to point out that Lord Jagannath, that Krishna, they didn't forget about the gopis. Then the Rath would stop to reciprocate, to respond to that kind of feeling. So then when again Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would come forward, then again, slowly, the Rath would move. So in this way, the gopis were expressing this special mood of separation from Krishna, which is actually the most ecstatic feeling that devotees could experience. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was exemplifying this, and Srila Prabhupada also, by his manifestation of this all different, so many Ratha Yatra festivals that he was inspiring devotees to organize throughout the world and continue to having them. It's also giving us such an opportunity to experience some little glimpse of all that ecstatic experience that Lord Chaitanya and the gopis have towards Krishna. So we will stop here. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna. Thank you. When Mahaprabhu, he was dancing and all, and then for some time he stopped the dancing, and then he started singing one refrain. You remember anyone? Say, Prananath Painu, Yatalagi, Madan Dahana Gehu, something like that. So after a long time, I got my Lord back. So the Cupid, effects are lessening, like something like that, the meaning. So then Mahaprabhu started explaining. Then he started explaining this verse. Ahushchate nalina padarvindam. So this is amazing. Prabhupada, actually Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, is explaining this verse. So many devotees, actually, especially Mayavadis, they say that just see, Krishna is teaching Jnana Yoga to the gopis. So Jnana Yoga is superior to Bhakti Yoga. Like that they have an opinion. So sometimes people, Mayavadis, come and argue with me also. I was always confused why Krishna taught this Jnana Yoga. He sent Uddhava also to teach Jnana Yoga. Then, but Vishwanath Chakravarti explains in the purport that when gopis went to meet Krishna during Rasa dance, Krishna taught Karma Kanda. Then Krishna sent Uddhava, and then now here also he taught Jnana Yoga. So the purpose is that when the gopis chastised Krishna, that time you taught Karma Kanda, now you are teaching Jnana Yoga. What is this nonsense? Then Krishna said, I want to show them that this Karma Kanda and this Jnana Yoga, they are so useless that you have rejected. You have rejected and taken up devotion. So in order to show your superiority of your devotion, I taught both the things, but both the times you rejected. So that shows that Bhakti Yoga is superior. Like that. So Mahaprabhu very nicely explains this verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita during Rath Yatra ceremony. So one important thing he says that for everybody, mind and heart are same. But for me, my heart and Vrindavan are same. And then you like Vrindavan, so please come and stay in my heart. So that is the meaning of Rath Yatra.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Rath Yatra Festival ki jai. Gaur Premanande.